Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our webinar where our guest for today is in workplace apps. We have Ralph and Shubangi to showcase their module for manufacturing in Acumatica. So we'll be talking about process manufacturing and quality management suite for Acumatica Manufacturing Edition. So if you have questions, inquiries, you may raise them on the Q&A box or in the chat box, and Shubangi will assist you with the questions, and also Ralph. So thank you. I will now pass on the floor to Ralph.
Very good. We appreciate the opportunity to do a presentation to you today, this evening, again, morning, evening, night, wherever you happen to reside. And again, we're going to be covering two subjects: uh, process manufacturing and quality management suite. The agenda is that we're first going to do a little bit about who we are. Then we're going to talk about why QMS, a little bit of why the relationship between us and Acumatica started in terms of filling some gaps in their product. We'll then talk about the industries where quality is critical. We'll look at some quality features. We'll do a short demonstration of QMS, and then we're going to move into process manufacturing. We'll define what process manufacturing is, the industries that it targets. We'll also go through a short presentation, a short demonstration of the process manufacturing system, really pointing out the additions, extensions that we've done to the core product. There's people from across the world on the call from our staff. I'm Ralph Kubek. I'm responsible for sales and relationships, also a little bit of services. Ablash is product management, and then Surrenda is manages services for us. That's part of the team that's in the United States. Clearly, in Asia, we have a very large operation in Asia, and you can see the key players in our staff. Ojul runs that operation for us. Hamendra is responsible for the actual product development of the solutions that we're going to see. You'll see Shalenda. Shabangi is part marketing, also part client management. In some of our service and delivery people are also there. So those are the names and the faces that you'll see if we begin to work with you, as well as you might hear during the presentation. Now, who is Workplace Apps? We have been around the industry for about 30, 35 years, targeting two industries or two segments. The first one is process manufacturing, and the second one, closely related to process manufacturing, is quality management. Key as we're going through this is these products are natively built within Acumatica, using the same tool sets, same database, same development structure as Acumatica. Hopefully by the not end, but even a few minutes into the presentation, when we begin to go through screens, you're not going to know the difference between what we wrote and designed and what Acumatica might have designed and we wrote, or suggestions that we made to Acumatica to improve their product. And you can see we have a high number of certified developers and consultants. And again, our primary focus is process manufacturing in quality. We've won quite a few awards over the years, President's Club, MVP, etc. So everyone could point out their awards. We're very proud of those. So now we'll get into the meat, which is let's first of all talk about quality management. Part of the relationship that started around 4 years ago with Acumatica was that they thought they had a few gaps within their product. And because of our experience, we kind of joined forces and we began to sit down with the Acumatica engineers, product managers, and go through what needed to be extended within the core Acumatica product to address quality. First of all, what's QMS and why QMS? There's really four different types of needs out there. There's internal quality needs. It needs to be integrated into the system. There's customer requirements, vendor requirements, and industry requirements. The internal needs, it's really the pillars that you'll see in a little bit in terms of the quality management system for Acumatica. We need to be able to test items. We need to make certain they meet their specifications. We need to quarantine them if they don't meet specifications. We need to gate operations when we're producing something. If something fails in an early operation, don't want the user to continue to be able to uh, make and invest and do further costs on something that doesn't meet its specification. When something fails, we need to document it through a non-conformance corrective action process. You'll also see how we could begin to document that standard operating procedures were followed, and we always need to begin to analyze our vendors. Then we move into integrated quality. The key thing is that here it has to be tightly integrated into the system. Gone need to be the days where it's two disparate systems and someone is just walking through the factory, has a piece of paper, hand it to a quality person, and they hope things get done. You'll see how we quarantine and things in quality need to be approved before ERP transaction can take place. It needs to be simple. There needs to be automation and alerts, and the key thing is getting one source of the truth. There's then customer requirements. Customers sometimes require C of A's, certificates of analysis in related documentation. In some cases, customers are asking you, the end user, to begin to do tests and inspection while it's being shipped. And you need to gain control over quality issues using non-conformance and as well as Acumatica's case management system. There's then regulatory issues. There's recall, traceability pieces, right? If you're in certain industries, 10 or 15 minutes after a regulator comes in, you need to be able to say, where did this end product go? Who bought it? What raw materials were used? You want to have everything digitalized, and that includes both test results as well as nonconformance and corrective action. And C, nonconformance, CAPA, corrective and preventive action, a couple acronyms that I'll be using today. We always want to drive to excellence in terms of, again, standard operating procedures, nonconformance. Uh, there's many different standards to meet. This is the alphabet soup of the numbers you probably hear about in different industries. I just want to point out that the QMS module within Acumatica is a part of solving these problems or being able to meet these requirements. There's many things that core Acumatica has without its QMS system. The security role, the engineering change control. So again, the QMS module is just a piece of allowing people to meet these certifications. Quality management system, we'll go through this. We have checklists, nonconformance, AQL, acceptable quality limits. I really like to focus on this slide. There's really five pillars, five legs on a stool in working with the Acumatica that we felt we both needed to create. We first of all need to ensure that a product meets its specification. We then needed to make certain that standard operating procedures are followed. We're going to call those checklists. We then have tools that daily, weekly, monthly, someone needs to go out and verify that they're still in spec and they're still calibrated properly. When something fails, there then needs to be a nonconformance, corrective action workflow created, and then key to many people is qualifying a vendor. Can I buy this particular part from this particular vendor? So with that, I'm going to go in and we'll do a short walkthrough of the Acumatica solution. And I'm just going to change screens here. And now what someone should see, and
Yes,
Shabangi, you can now see an Acumatica screen, correct?
yes, I can.
So there's a menu, there's a lot of things to talk through, but I'm going to try to get through quality in about 10 or 15 minutes to leave plenty of time to go through process as well as question and answer. So to show you most of those elements, I'm just going to go in and do a PO receipt for an item. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick a vendor. And I'm going to say I don't worried about the bill. I'm going to go in and do a receipt for an item called demo. Now, as soon as I key off this, one of the elements was, can I buy this part from this vendor? This is an alert letting us know that this vendor does not have the proper certification within Acumatica for me to buy that part. Now, there's different things that you could do with this warning. This is just a warning. It's going to tell me that I can't buy this, but for presentation purposes, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. We could prevent the user from actually buying this, or what most clients do is they put the PO on hold, use the Acumatica alert and approval system to say Ralph just tried to buy something from someone he shouldn't, and then they make that change. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to buy one. And since this is serial allotted, I'm going to go ahead and indicate a lot number. I'm now going to release this. What was one of this? What's the other leg of the stool? We first of all wanted to make certain we could buy it from this vendor. The next thing is their standard operating procedures, uh, checklists, as we might call them. So the situation here is I happen to be a food entity, and I'm going to describe this form in a little bit once it opens. And this is a QC order, which I'll explain a little bit when we go a little step further, but I'm a food company. And this truck just pulled up and I have a standard operating procedure that someone says, was the truck clean or not? And now this might be on a clipboard, on an Excel worksheet, but now it's embedded into the Acumatica ERP system. So someone was alerted, let's not unload that truck until someone goes in and creates this checklist, fills out this checklist. They evaluate it and you can see it pass this test. So that's the second leg on the stool. Were these standard operating procedures followed? Did someone check the truck? Because if the truck failed, if it was the wrong temperature, was dirty, the customer might actually turn around the truck and not even receive the merchandise into their warehouse. The third part of the stool is verifying that the item meets its specification. The other piece we talked about was quarantine. So you could see there's a location here. What the system automatically did was, because it's set up, it told me that this item needed to be quality checked. And because it needed to be quality checked, we moved it to a particular location. Now, using the core Acumatica functionality, you could prevent the item from being sold, moved, used, etc. Now, lots of alerts and dashboards, but to get through the conversation today, I'm just going to drill right into this order. QC order, this is what you saw before. The header, first of all, because this is built within the Acumatica infrastructure, there might be activities that you might want to create. There could be a file. I might get a C of A from a particular customer or vendor that's coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and link this item now to this particular record. If I was on a mobile device, I could actually take a picture and upload that. So all the capabilities that you're used to seeing on all the Acumatica screens. Next is some header information. It's what vendor it is, what PO number it is, when it came in. We do some sampling. How am I going to sample this item? We also support ALQ, acceptable quality limits. All this is in the setup of the item that we'll spend a few minutes looking at. Now we do these tests. I need to make certain that this item is meeting its specifications. And I'm going to say this item is dark red. We have alphanumeric tests, but I'm going to say, you know what, dark red, it's okay with me. I'm going to follow that. We then have numeric tests. And you can see there's a range. I'm purposely going to fail these to show another stool on our leg. I'm just going to indicate that fails. But the last type of test we have is Boolean. Now, just like you have in all Acumatica, and for those of you that need to be validated, there's a complete vendor history, audit history saying who did what when. Someone could enter in the results. Now, the second part is I have to evaluate these results. With the answer to those samples, what am I going to do? Based upon the ALQ setting, the system is saying, you know what, this is going to fail. The third step of the process is I need to post this. Posting is two things. It's the final step of the quality function, as well as it's an inventory transaction. It's an inventory transaction because this is sitting up in that quarantine hold bin, right? And now, because I rejected this, I need to do something with it. And I'm going to move it to an MRB board. If it had passed, I could just move it into inventory. And clearly in the real world, we get 100 in, we accept some, we might reject some, etc. So all of that is within the realm of quality. I'm going to post this. So now that item is sitting in material review board location, and I could go through the standard Acumatica process to return it to vendor, rework it, etc. The other leg of the stool is we talked about nonconformance and corrective action. So you could see that transaction was automatically created. Again, for purposes of speed, I'm not going to go to the various dashboards. I'm just going to refresh my screen. I see there's a nonconformance transaction that was created. And now there's a workflow that automatically got created and people were alerted. It's letting me know that this item, this lot number was received on this date from this vendor. And here's the test that it failed. It goes through a typical nonconformance process, right? What happened? And I could go ahead and indicate what happened. And now I could begin to do some root cause analysis. This is a workflow. Notice this is all gray. Why? Because we want some approval processes here. So someone with the right security would go in and say the process is complete, and suddenly you're going to see that new turn into a process approved. Now I could begin to do my root cause analysis. I might have some major categories that I want to begin to accumulate information on. So I could have some KPIs. Why are things failing? And you could also see there's a complete event history indicating who did what when. One more right turn as it relates to this process is, again, I could finish the actions taken, but what I want to do just to make a quick right turn is we had talked about a corrective and preventive action workflow. This was a major issue. So in many entities, if that issue becomes major, I need to raise it a level, and now I have a corrective and preventive action. I'm now going to do some additional investigation. I'm going to document what we need to do to correct it, what we need to prevent it, how we verified that it's actually working, and a complete vendor history. And you can see this is linked together. So hopefully within maybe the 6 or 7 minutes that it took me to do that, you could see that we have an item. It's going to be required inspection. We could do inspections. We could find out that it passed or failed. If it fails, we put it into a quarantine area. We return to the vendor, and then we have a corrective and preventive action flow to work on. Now, why did all that happen? Because of the setup. If I go into the demo item setup, you'll see that if you turn on quality QMS for Acumatica, you get additional screen. When can we test these items? We could test them when they're received, when they're shipped, when they're produced. I'll get through work in progress in a second. We could also do ad hoc. For many entities, ad hoc has turned into stability testing, retesting. You're chemical, you're in drugs, you're holding back some samples. And maybe every 30 days, every 60 days, you need to begin to do some tests. So there could be stability testing. RMAs, something's returned from a customer, we could trigger an inspection. We also support warehouse transfers. And this is where you would just link up. What do I want to do for QA receiving? Notice there's a vendor here. So this is just saying that when I'm on vendor AA, when I receive it, those are the tests we will do. You notice that we did a lot of different tests when we receive this item. That's because there's a global test that says if it comes in from anyone else other than AA vendor, these are the tests that we want to do. You see, we also have separate tests for customers. I'm going to go quickly into the bill of material because we do support work in progress testing. And how do we do that? Well, I'm not going to process a work order. I'm just going to go into a bill of material, quality management for Acumatica, adds another criteria up here indicating is QC required. So what this is saying is that while you're in this cutting and shaping operation, or when you would go do the move from cutting and shaping into assembly, Acumatica is going to raise its hand. It's going to alert quality. In this case, someone from quality is going to have to perform a numeric test. They're going to have to weigh this, and they're going to have to verify that it's between 1 and 5 pounds. So that's how we handle work in progress inspection. A couple other key elements that we did talk about on that PowerPoint was testing equipment. So now I'm going to go into bill materials. I'm going to go into tools. I call up this molding tool. Now you see there's testing we could do. And notice this is weekly, monthly. You'll determine this interval. But now we could have specific tests that we could do every day, every week, every month. The system will, based upon the notification days, based upon the interval, start and stop date. There's a process that every Monday, for instance, people could be notified. You need to go out to this tool and any other tool that's configured and go out and begin to document, is it still within specification, or what you need to do to confirm that this item could still be used. The last leg of the stool, um, in terms of quality that we talked about, was lot traceability and recall. I'm not going to run this, but we could pick an inventory number, a serial number, and then we could say forward or backward, right? Many industries, again, if some government regulators come in, they might give you a finished good, they might give you a raw material, and within 15 minutes, you're going to have to say, where did that raw material go? Or what went into this finished good? So you could run traceability reports. It's going to give you all the different inventory transactions that are available for that item in that traceability report. So that's a very, very quick tour of the quality management system. And again, the pillars of the quality management system. Did the item meet its specifications? Did we document standard operating procedures? If something failed, was there the capability of creating a non-conformance corrective action workflow to find out what happened? The third leg is verifying that the machinery and equipment we use is within tolerance. And then the fifth one is verifying that a vendor could properly supply the part. So I'm going to move away from this screen. That was our short demonstration. And again, this product lives on like all of Acumatica. There's releases twice a year. We're going to begin to do some things with destructive testing. It really relates a little bit to accounting. We could scrap things, but if we're going to destroy something, we might want to separate that out, right? We take a block and we crush it. We need to. We might want to account for that separately because it didn't fail, it didn't reject it, it's just been destroyed. We're going to improve our sampling plans. We're going to come out with a rating system. We're also going to go into some additional enhancements with regards to nonconformance and corrective action. And then Acumatica is now supporting attributes, and we're going to be going into that functionality to improve some of the reporting. We have over 100 customers within the Acumatica world using QMS, and here's just a couple of customer testimonials that we have um, from Lecanto and a few other people. So now I'm going to radically change gears. We've talked a little bit about um, what we do in the area to allow Acumatica to allow you to be able to handle quality and the like. I'm just signing into another system. Just give me a second. Sometimes I can't do two things at one time. So the other relationship we have with Acumatica is taking Acumatica and doing some extensions that it could meet the needs of process manufacturers. Some cases is what is manufacturing and why it's different. And when we do our presentation of the process manufacturing suite, you're going to see this. In many process manufacturers, they're concerned about two things. They need to track two things, not only the raw materials that they use, but also their chemical and physical properties. There's SDS sheets, there's nutritional labels that need to be handled. And you'll see how all that is now handled within the Acumatica database. Bills of material, their recipes, and people begin to create them based upon weight and volume, not only discrete unit of measure. And because we have weight and volume, we need to support density. They manage yield. There's also different types of losses. And we'll explain that as we're going through the setup of a formula. I have line losses. I have constant losses. Also, we need to be able to size the batch because of different material. And like we talked about in the quality piece, recall and traceability is very important. Here's a myriad of the major functionality items that are within the system. This is being recorded and everyone will be able to take their time. I think critical to this is the aspect of different units of measure, the fact that we deal with packaging and versioning, the fact that we could begin to do formalization and linkage to items. And again, going back to quality, the capability of dealing with ALQ. Industries that this focus on, food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, personal care products, nutraceuticals, you could read the list. Again, all of those people who are generally formula based. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a different screen on the screen and hopefully Shabangi, you can now see a different Acumatica screen.
Yes. Yes, Raj.
So I want to start out a little bit at the end point of this, which was the first item that was on that list, to talk about this concept of chemical and physical attributes. So I'm going to call up this particular coding. And what you could see this analysis is going to do for me is, in many cases, process manufacturers need to be concerned with two things. How am I making this? What is my formula, my recipe? However, I have requirements because of labeling, and I need to keep track of the physical and chemical properties. So now you could see on one screen, because of the way the database was built, we could see both. We could also, most importantly, begin to look at materials with properties. So if I look at pigment, I could see raw materials B and C are part of that. But when I look at this OH value, it's only raw material E. What's lead? Lead happens to be just raw material C. So there's analysis is able to be done to help people balance both what we use as well as what the result is going to be. I don't want to say this is really a product development tool, but it's a product refinement tool because maybe I'm at this arsenic area and I'm going to indicate, you know what, someone just called and told me I need to make a change. And you could see that value is 1.69. I'm going to say we need to increase our arsenic. Notice how the system automatically went through and said, okay, based upon the formulas, based upon the setup of the system, if I need to raise my arsenic total to this amount, I could see now I need how much of that raw material A I need. The system would have also been smart enough to know from balancing it, maybe this raw material was used in different chemicals and we could begin to see different characteristics. So again, process manufacturers, it's pretty important to have that in many cases. Now I'm going to go to a formula. In some cases, people think, well, a formula is a bill material. Yes and no. I'm going to go into a bill material. I'm going to go into that same bill material for 126. I'm going to go into the active one. And in Acumatica, one thing that does make its process manufacturing a little different than some other solutions is the fact there's a routing. What steps am I going to go through? So we could begin to identify that in order to make this particular coating, we're going to mix it and we're going to grind it. We could begin to go through and indicate how long it's going to take to do each of those steps. It's based upon a work center. Why do we use work centers? Because that's where we could house costs and overhead rates, et cetera, also capacity, so that we could do scheduling. And much like in the discrete world, we want to link quality into this. So it's totally integrated. So now what we're saying in this case is this is the mixture operation. And when we're finished mixing it, or while we're mixing it, quality is going to be informed and quality is going to have to begin to give some information back with regards to what the pigmentation is. Next is material. And I'm going to stick on quality for a second. Key is standard operating procedures, the documents that people could read. So they could be typed in or they could be linked out. Checklists are also important, particularly in process manufacturers, food, chemicals, etc. There's a checklist out there. And this is just saying that for this particular operation, before someone goes ahead and starts it, someone would need to document, much like we did during that receiving process, the speed, and we did other items related to that. We talked about units of measure. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at a raw material A. We're able to handle units of measure. Now, Acumatica, the core process as it relates to, let's just say the distribution module parts of it have different units of measure we could buy and sell things at. But what process manufacturing brings to the table is we support both weight and volume. Out of the box, you could begin to do conversions from any weight to weight units of measure. Most importantly, though, we could do these conversions from volume to weight. Why could we do those? Because we're keeping track of the density. So now you could see that we can convert, in this case, gallons into pounds. And when we do the measurement in the formula, which you'll see in a second, we know what the multiplication is or what the formula is in terms of density. Chemical and physical properties. How was it able to do that analysis? Because the system is keeping track of what chemical and physical properties are in each individual raw material. So you could see some major extensions to the database. As we indicated, and I'm purposely going to click new for a second. When you're setting up a formula, you could say, how do I want to create this formula? A specific unit of measure. But again, a lot of process manufacturers begin to use either a percent of weight or percent of volume. And I'm going to go back to the formula to talk through it. But I just wanted to show you where that is because this formula, excuse me, was set up to be specific. Again, we could begin to deal with a weight, volume, units of measure. Also, you could see how we have the stocking unit measure. How am I going to stock this? And how am I going to formulate this? Uh, in many cases, right, grams, people don't want to be in a system that says, gee whiz, it's 0.000001 pounds. When they formulate, they want to do it in a lower unit of measure and get supported. We talked about losses. There's 3 levels of losses that you saw on that slide. It's sometimes called overages, sometimes called line level losses, depending upon what industry you're in. But let's just say this is alcohol. This is indicating how much alcohol I need for this formula, but alcohol dissipates. So I might have some overages, line level losses that say, you know what, 15% of this is going to evaporate. So while I have my formula geared toward what I really want to make, my costing and inventory requirements are all going to be based upon I need to gross it up by 15%. Or it's a powder. When I dump it into the mixer, some of it just dissipates into the air. To stay on the subject of losses, I'm going to go to the totals tab and there's production losses. The system's going to produce yield and let you know what we yield. But walking in, someone's going to know my yield's going to be 85%. So I have to plan for a 15% loss. So the materials would be properly sized and allocated, and the cost is going to include those anticipated losses. There's also something called loss constant. We're a bottler. So there's a filling line. We're moving from a tank to a bottle. There's 15 gallons of liquid that is in those pipes. Every job I do, whether I do a batch of 1,000 or 1,000,000, I'm going to lose those 10 or 12 gallons every time. Or maybe I'm mixing things and the dough or the item that I'm mixing sticks to the paddle. So again, we want to deal with the ways that a process manufacturer needs to address losses. It's a line level loss because it's dissipate. Think of this being production yield type losses. And finally, it's pretty common in um, process manufacturing to have those loss constants. The other thing that happens in process manufacturing, you could see there's tolerances. In some cases, because of the time of the year, the time of the day, product issues, you might let the plant begin to vary the formula a little bit. But you could begin to note tolerances upper and lower, and they could move or they could issue, use a little more or a little less of this. However, if it's outside those tolerances, we're going to give you some warning messages. There's consumables, byproducts, tools, overhead. And finally, we get to the totals where it's going to take all those costs and summarize into one. Clearly, for process manufacturing, again, the whole event audit trail is important. The key really in process manufacturing is not only how we formulate, but here's a case where this item actually goes into a number of different things. The whole concept between the process manufacturing system is in one place, you could begin to maintain and control costs in the formula. Then, for the lack of a better term, you link it to different items that you're going to manufacture. So I'm going to go into this 5-gallon pail. This 5-gallon pail is something that we make in a unique SKU. Clearly, in order to make a 5-gallon pail, I need 5 gallons of that particular item that I've just made. If there's a process step, what do I need to do to take that formula and make it into an end item? Well, all I need to do is pack it. Material aspect, we know how much of the coating that we need, and then we have packaging material and other items that we add. Again, there's consumables, byproducts, tools, overhead that all can be added, with the end result being there's a total cost of this item, but important to note, we're keeping track of and giving a lot of visibility to what's the cost of the formula and what's the cost of the bill of material. Many people in process manufacturing are co-packers. They're private labeling things. So they always want to be sensitive to what the formula cost is, because again, that is controlled separately, regardless of where this item is going to be used. And they could see the cost of transforming that item, the specific labeling and packaging costs to provide something to Ralph. So that's the key thing as it relates to beginning to see what was in that PowerPoint as it relates to integrating quality and supporting different units of measure, supporting both liquids and solids. When we begin to process these orders, I'm going to go into something that we call super batch, because in many cases, what someone might be doing is we're going to make that solvent, and I'm going to change the screen a little bit, and I'm going to indicate I'm going to create a fill batch. A fill batch means I just want to begin to fill some jugs with something. I'm going to indicate that I have this formula 153 and drums. And you know what? I'm going to say I'm going to make one drum. So I want to make, and I'm going to look at this, and I also want to make some pails today. Because we support multiple bills of material, I could go ahead and switch ones I'm going to make today. And finally, I'm going to create a tote. And you can see this is also, I have to pick which way I'm going to manufacture this item today. And again, I got one. So now the planner went down, and MRP could also be part of this. The planner went down and said, okay, those are all the things that I want to manufacture today. The system's now going to provide me some pretty important information. It's going to say, gee whiz, if I make all this item, underlying this, how much do I need to blend? So you could begin to see that it's indicating, right, I had 5-gallon drums, 55-gallon pails, and I had totes. Now what the system is doing is going through, creating a calculation, and for purposes of manufacturing, what the system is going to produce for me is 4 work orders. A work order, batch ticket, and process manufacturing, where I could begin to go out and I could tell the packing line, be prepared to pack 55-gallon drums, be prepared to pack 5-gallon gallons, and some totes. I also get an individual uh, ticket sub batch here that's I sent to the back, and I tell the back, you know what, go ahead and blend 310 gallons of this particular material, because the people in the back, to some extent, they don't care where it's being packed out, right? Their job is to go ahead and be sure they blend this amount. Individual work orders are key for many entities that are being uh, need verification, lot traceability, right? I need to separately track, was this quantity good? When was it made? How is it tested? And then I might need to track under separate work orders the controls relate to pack it out. So super batch becomes pretty important for some of our operations. The last part that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and create a batch. and talk through a few other features were on that list. First of all, we have a few batch types. Assembly is, let's just say I'm making orange juice and lemonade, and I make them and then I shrink wrap them together, and I have an assortment pack. That's an assembly bill material, very much like a discrete bill material. Fill batches. Yesterday I made some items, made some juice. I put it in a tank. Today I'm going to fill them out. I'm going to pick a mixed batch just for this. Mixed batch says what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the item as well as pack it out today. I'm going to pick the same formula that we've used. I'm going to go in and say, you know what, I just want to make drums today. And I'm going to make 12 drums. I'm going to save this. I'm going to create my batch ticket um, in order to make this and begin to release it. And I wanted to go to the batch ticket because what we begin to see is some of the power that's available within the framework of the process manufacturing system. Because before I make this, first of all, it's giving me some information with regards to the batch weight as well as the order rate, right? If I have losses, I might want to make 5,000, but because of losses, it's going to be 5,500. So I have to make certain I have the right containers to put it in. There's critical material. I like to call this a shortage report. Before I issue this work order, I could drill in, I could see, gee whiz, this is good. I have everything. In reality, I'm going to just click a couple times. This is less letting me know all the material. But if I was short, I would have a list here of those items that I'm short, and I would be able to create a purchase order, manufacturing order, or maybe I have multiple plants and I'm just going to transfer things from plant 1 to plant 2. Batch sizing also becomes important. This order was sized because I wanted to make that number of 12 gallons or 12 drums. However, in some cases, someone might say, how much material do I have and how much could I make? It's going to tell me based on all the raw material I have in stock, I can make X number of drums. Particularly in today's environment of shortages, key raw material availability. I might have a specific chemical. I might have 100 pounds of it. However, today I only want to use 50 of that because I'm going to have to use it in different places. So I could identify that item is a key raw material, and then I could begin to resize. And now the system going to tell me how much could I make based upon only using some of the inventory that's available. Clearly in process manufacturing, you're going to resize your batch based upon weight or volume, based upon mixers, ovens, etc. that you might have. I'm going to release this order to production. And the last thing that I wanted to review was part of the Acumatica functionality as it relates to lot traceability. I'm going to go ahead and issue some material. Clearly, in many cases, this is done through a WMS system, scanning, etc. The reason I really want to go in here is I'm going to select these materials and I'm going to issue these as if I'm going to issue them manually. I really wanted to get to this point. This point is letting me know that based upon the setup in Acumatica, you can indicate lots are used up on a FIFO basis, LIFO basis, earliest expiration basis, or some other rules. So now Acumatica is suggesting to me what lots I should do. Notice this is split lot because this is actually saying which lot can I use because of the amount I need. In our rules, it took this 506 first, and then it used up the rest. But maybe I just actually want to use only that lot number. So I really went to this screen to begin to point out how Acumatica handles the allocation, and this is the beginning of that traceability that every time we do an inventory transaction, we're going to be able to denote the lot numbers that we're using, and then we could have that traceability that you saw in the other report. So that's how we could issue material to a job. I'm going to leave that screen. And I'm going to go back into that work order, batch ticket. And again, while I created that batch ticket, again, MRP, being able to generate from MRP, being able to generate from customer orders. And then there's move commands, etc. I'm just going to do one move just to describe one of the things that we had talked about. I'm going to do this release. The system, remember we had those standard operating procedures that are there. So now with the system saying you can't start this job or you can't start that particular step. Why? Because there's some boilerplate instructions out there. There's the need for someone who would have gotten alerted to go in, and now they have a digital form in front of them and say, did you actually do these two things for this long a time? Notice it could be two people. Someone can check it and someone could double check that and complete that. So I just wanted to go through how this gating process that we talked about, that when there's quality involved, we could prevent items from moving forward until standard operating procedures are followed. We have about 15 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this screen off. I'm going to move this screen off, and I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. As Acumatica, as I indicated, there's two versions that are issued every month, or every year, I should say. If Ablash was on the phone when I said twice a month, he'd probably go into a little panic attack. We did a lot of improvements in 23R2 related to user experience, the super batch functionality, the lab functionality. Uh, in terms of 21R1, our real focus is being able to connect to different devices as well as SDS in labeling. There's databases like LISAM out there that are handling and maintaining details with regards to the chemical makeup of the item. So we're going through a process of doing some integration with them. So now you would no longer be responsible for keeping track of that data. You could sign up with a source called LISAM. They have, what salt and paint and turpentine, all those things are made up. They'll be brought into Acumatica to be able to do the type of process we just talked about. Future releases, we're going to begin to work on some ability to create co-products. We support byproducts now. Co-products are a slightly different animal, so we're working on that in conjunction with Acumatica. And then there's approximately, I think, 20 or so users of the process manufacturing solution for Acumatica, and this is a couple of the users that are out there and a couple partners that we've worked with. Um, I'm going to take a breath because we had talked about leaving the last 10 to 15 minutes open for any questions that might have come in. Shabangi, any questions come in terms of the chat?
No.
Okay. So this is just a screen. Obviously, it's a screen, but there's places to find information. Clearly, there's the Acumatica staff. Clearly, there's the partners that you're working at. Acumatica has a marketplace site that does have a specific page for process as well as quality. Acumatica community, and then for particularly partners, there's a filled by Acumatica site that begins to give you battle cards and other information. I would, as long as we have a couple of minutes, is key to, again, some people in food and chemicals, etc., is the need to be validated by an outside source. This is just our acronym for validation as a service. So to make you aware, our staff is well versed in what is required to properly implement a system so that it is validatable. And we also have the resources within our firm to actually do the actual validation itself. So that is what we wanted to cover quickly. Again, I think this is covering two subjects, quality management and process manufacturing at the speed of light. But hopefully this provided you some insight into, first of all, who we are, why we in Acumatica teamed up to begin to deploy quality embedded into Acumatica, as well as extend Acumatica's features to properly support or better support, I should say, a process manufacturing operation. Shabangi or anyone else from our team, if there's no questions, any other items that you think I missed as I sped through this, or questions that sometimes people occasionally ask?
Ralph, we have one question from the chat. So it's from Aida Lee. The question is, If the cost of purchase changes in invoices, which only come in later than release the material to production order, does Acumatica able to adjust the cost in the production order automatically?
Um, see, uh, Acumatica has a setup, and I'm not the total Acumatica expert, but when you begin to configure Acumatica, you set up how am I going to do my costing, last average, FIFO, LIFO, etc. As items are brought into inventory, the inventory file will be updated based upon what the purchase order, what the receipt was really for. That will update the cost, and therefore, when that item is released to inventory, I'm sorry, released to production, it will use the cost that has been associated with that item based upon however the setup was. Is it the average price? Is it the last price you paid, etc.? So I do think the question was, will the cost of an inventory be used for the costing of an item in a work order? And the answer to that question is yes.
All right. So
Acumatica
thank you,
also
Ralph.
I would add that Acumatica also supports landed cost. So maybe embedded in that question is, I received the merchandise today, I want to use it today, but it's landed, right? I'm importing it. With the landed cost module in Acumatica, it knows what those costs are going to be. So again, when it's actually issued to the job, it'll be fully burdened. It would not only be the costs that we're paying the vendor, but it will include the freight, importation, duties, all those other costs in that item.
Thank you, Ralph, for the explanation. And I think this question is related to financials, so maybe Marvin can add more to this. So maybe Ida, you can send an email to us, and then we'll assist you on your financial related question about manufacturing. So you can email apse@akimatica.com. So is there other questions, or you can raise your hand so that I can unmute you? So Q&A, there's no questions in the Q&A, and I think that's all. So no more questions.
Well, again, we appreciate the opportunity to do this. Hopefully it was helpful. It was informative. I also realized it was from a U.S. perspective, it was drinking from a fire hose. So as you have questions, need additional information, clearly follow up with the Acumatica support team that you're using, follow up with your partner. And then Shabangi and I are always available to begin to delve into the details. And again, we appreciate the time and we look forward to future conversations. Everyone be safe and well.
Okay then. So thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Shubangi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So I'll be sharing the recording, sorry, after the webinar. And then if you have other questions, send us an email, send Ralph, Shubangi, or eWorkplace apps an email. And we will all be happy to answer your queries regarding manufacturing, especially the quality management and process manufacturing modules or suites by eWorkplace apps. So thank you and have a nice day.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.